If you're in the market for an ERP system or simply curious about which are the top 10 ERP systems in 2025, that's what we are going to discuss in this video. So let's dive in. Hello everyone, my name is Sam Gupta. I'm principal at Elevate IQ. Elevate IQ is the independent digital transformation advisory consulting firm. We help our clients with the enterprise digital transformation strategy, system selection, change management. On that note, let's go back to today's topic, which is going to be top 10 ERP systems in 2025. Just to be clear, this is the list of the individual products and not of the vendors. Each of the vendors that we have in the market may have several different products in their portfolio. If you're looking for the list of different vendors and their macro capabilities, we have another list that we published, which is the top 10 ERP vendors in 2025. As part of this list, our focus is going to be of the individual products. Sometimes the vendors that we have in the market, they might not have leading position, but they might have a product that is really good. So you might sense when you look at the results of this list that some of the systems that you were hoping to see, they might not appear on the list. And the reason for that is because those systems may not have the overarching market share, and sometimes because of that they might not rank on this list. So that is just one factor. Then the other factor that you need to keep in mind while reviewing this list is this is for the companies of all sizes. Each of the products that we have on the list is going to be fit and they are positioned for a very specific target market as well as the industry. But this is going to be slightly more generic list that is going to be for all of the companies as well as the industries. In general, our recommendation always is that if you cannot afford a paid selection process, cannot afford to hire a consulting companies like Elevate IQ, then your best bet is going to be to go through the very specific list. For example, let's say if you are in manufacturing, try to find the manufacturing list. If you can find even more specific, we have list for market segments such as your plastic extrusion or configured to order. Now, even those lists could be slightly more generic. It's a very, very, very hard to produce lists that are going to be for specific context, specific requirements, but this is all available for free. So again, if you cannot afford a paid selection process, then you would be going for the list for the specific market segment and then probably try to find some options from there and try to evaluate them further. But if you cannot find anything, then this is probably going to be the most generalized list containing the leading ERP options in the market. So one of the layers that we generally look at when we are reviewing these ERP systems is whether the strategy of that specific ERP system is prescriptive or generalized. And there are going to be several different factors that are driven from this specific strategy. For example, let's say if the ERP system is going to be slightly more prescriptive for a specific industry or the business model, the approach that these ERP vendors are taking for the prescriptive category is that they are going to combine all the relevant integrations, ancillary products, and add ons, and they are going to sell this as the integrated suite. Now, if you are on budget, if you don't have as high implementation budget, then this could be a great product. But then the sacrifice that you need to make is this particular strategy is that if you try to pick and choose many different add-ons or many different specific products, whether you are looking at CAD, PLM, WMS, TMS, when you try to do that, then this strategy could become even more expensive because sometimes these integrations are not going to be available as part of their ecosystem. Speaking of the ecosystems, in general, when you look at the ecosystems of the prescriptive vendors, their ecosystems are not going to be as mature. You are not going to find as many add-ons just because the way the industry is structured, laid out. So in general, you are not going to find as many options. The generalized category is slightly different in that the consulting base is going to be much broader. You are going to find a lot more options. You are going to have a lot more consultants, partners, resellers that are going to be practicing in those ecosystems. The talent base is going to be limited with the prescriptive category. So when we are going to review these individual systems, we are going to touch on all of these layers. But once you understand the layers, then you'll be able to figure out which product fits where, what is going to be their strategy, and then you might be able to extrapolate some of these trends yourself as well. So now the other things that you need to keep in mind, other layer, is that some of these smaller systems, if you look at functionally, sometimes they might appear as richer than the larger systems just because they are going to package a lot more capabilities operationally. But the real differentiation when you look at these products is going to be when you have slightly broader products or generalized products. They are designed to support many different product categories, many different business models. So they are going to have a lot more scalability overall from the business model perspective. The specific product, sometimes especially the prescriptive category, that is going to be designed for a very specific industry, because when you look at these CAD products, PLM products, some of these supply chain planning products, they could be specific to a very specific product category, and we are talking about physical products here, inventory. So that's why these prescriptive products are going to be designed for a very micro industry. Now, if your business is always going to be in that micro industry, then you don't have as much of a challenge. You can go with the prescriptive product. But let's say if you are going to be either part of the holding company where you are trying to utilize the same product across the board, or you are going to be part of private equity, or if you are going to be, let's say, if your business model is evolving and at this point of time you are not sure about your target state, where you are going to be in next 3, 4, or 5 years, and that is going to be probably the lifetime of any ERP implementation, then you might run into challenges because the specific products are going to be designed for a very specific micro industry in mind. Sometimes they might be able to support many business models, but generally they are very limited in a perspective. The final perspective that you need to keep in mind, or the layer, is going to be localized products versus the globalized products. The localized products are going to be targeted only for a specific geo industry. In general, even though ERP is a technology product, but they are trying to support the regulations, the localization of many different countries. So the geo matters, and sometimes even just the language of the ERP system, the way things might be spoken in North America may be very different in Australia. So which geo it is really designed for, can it really support the localization of those geographies, is going to be another factor that you need to keep in mind. Some products support these global workloads as part of the package itself, and some of them are going to utilize some of the add-ons partner package. And the more add-ons you are going to have as part of your implementation, generally you are looking to increase the risks because you have to deal with as many vendors. The warranty is carried by those many vendors. Sometimes there's going to be blame game between those vendors as well. But again, every single ERP system or suite that you are looking at is going to have some sort of pros and cons. You simply need to assess, okay, which is going to have the minimum amount of risk for you based on your corporate strategy as well as your business model. Now, the criteria that we utilize to compile this list is we look at things such as your product share, acquisition strategy, whether that is going to be focused on this particular ERP system or not. We are looking at product roadmap. We are looking at community momentum. We are looking at ecosystem, win rate, technology strategy, investors. All of these factors we combine, and we are trying to produce the quantitative score And that's how we compile this list. So now let's look at the list. Okay, number 10 on our list is Odoo. And Odoo would fall under that generalized category. And Odoo has a very specific strategy. It is open source. That is one of the layers that we have not touched so far. So open source is going to help. Number one, it's going to be one of the largest community, just because these open source committers and the developers, they are contributing their code for free, but each of the element of Odoo umbrella is not going to be open source. Generally, the way they make money is that only the code is probably going to be open source. Even that is not going to be complete. From the ERP perspective, for example, let's say if you look at things such as your accounting module, etc., they might not be open source. The other things such as CRM apps or sales apps, they might be open source. So from your perspective, the biggest advantage that you have from the open source perspective is that you have access to the code. Developers, IT generally prefer that if they are trying to over customize or customize the system to match the processes. While it looks great on paper, but generally we see a lot of issues just because of that, because generally the developers may not have as much business background, consulting background, and sometimes it's hard for them to forecast all of the issues that you are going to encounter. Generally, when you look at the developers, they are going to say, hey, give me the requirements, I'll try to model it, and I'll try to make it work. That might be okay at that given point of time. But generally, the challenge with the business model as well as the ERP centric processes is nobody knows what is their target state is going to be. And that's where you are going to run into challenges, even if you might have a particular algorithm that you have written inside Odoo that might work as of today, but tomorrow it's probably not going to scale as you get more requirement. And then you are going to be investing a lot of time in maintaining those workloads. So that is a little drawback of the open source. Overall, Odoo is a very diverse product. It is supported in many different geographies. So if you're looking for a global product that can support the globalization of many country, this could be a great product for you to consider as part of your evaluation. Now, Odoo overall, in terms of the size spectrum, and we generally segment our analysis in four different buckets. Number one is going to be startup. Number two is small. Number three is mid market. And number four is going to be enterprise. And we have very specific revenue band. And generally, revenue might not be the accurate indicator as well, because sometimes you are going to have organizational processes that are going to be far more developed, even though they might be pre-rev, for example, in the life sciences segment. So in those cases, you need to look at both factors, number of employees plus revenue. But the revenue is sort of the rough indicator that we are providing, that most of the companies in that particular segment are probably going to have similar processes. They are going to have similar appetite, budget, etc., that they can afford to spend on a specific ERP implementation or processes. Odoo in general is going to be friendlier for any of the companies that might be outgrowing QuickBooks at this point of time. You are going to get much higher value if you are on QuickBooks right now. QuickBooks, you have probably outsourced your accounting. Maybe you have it in house, but again, that's not the complete operational processes. It's probably going to be just the macro view that you are probably getting from your implementation. With Odoo, you can have all of these processes integrated as part of one workload in many different geographies. But Odoo is designed only for serial transactions. When you are going to look for the mature capabilities from the ERP perspective, from scheduling, planning, it's not comparable to other richer ecosystems or the systems that is going to be your Acumatica, NetSuite, etc. That is probably going to be the next stage of the ERPs that we have. But Odoo could be a great fit for companies that are going to outgrow QuickBooks or the accounting system that they might be on. So quickly touching on some of the strengths for Odoo, that is going to be number one. I have already touched on this point. Localized in many different countries. It is going to be a truly global solution. It's a very diverse solution. So if you have many different business models, it's going to be easier to be able to accommodate on this. Then you are going to have the open source and community. That is going to be a strength as well. Some of the limitations to keep in mind is the limited ERP layers. And again, I touched on this point as well, and only meant for slightly more serial processing when you are going to have those bulk transactions from the ERP perspective, when you are trying to decouple these ERP processes and you are looking for those advanced mature capabilities that are not going to be built. And if you are trying to build those, you are going to hit into limitations from the data model perspective. That's where you might get into trouble if you try to over customize it. But if you're looking only for serial processing, when your processes are not going to be as mature, that's when Odoo could be a great fit, just because from the skill set perspective, also you are not going to be as mature to be able to handle the larger ERP systems. So that's where Odoo sort of fits in. Some other limitations to keep in mind is a higher failure rate. And again, there is nothing against the product itself, but people or the consultants that we have in Odoo ecosystem in general, they try to overestimate their own capabilities. They try to over customize, and that's why companies run into trouble. So make sure you are understanding the core capabilities of the product and platform, and don't overcommit, don't over customize, because that's where you will run into issues. Some of the other things, in general, the integration and implementation cost is going to be higher because the ecosystem from the integration perspective is not as developed. In general, what Odoo is trying to do, they have a lot of different tools and apps as part of their portfolio. So they just don't have their ecosystems as developed from the commercial perspective, from the marketplace perspective. You are going to find a lot more apps from the Odoo perspective. So let's say if you're looking for all of these best of breed tools, then you are going to run into challenges. You will invest in a lot in consulting, customization, as well as long-term maintenance. So that is the limitation to keep in mind. And that's number 10. Now, number 9 on our list is Acumatica. So Acumatica is going to be probably the next product after Odoo. It is going to have slightly more advanced capabilities from the ERP perspective. This is a true real ERP where you are going to find a lot more processes. For example, let's say if your past life was on SAP Oracle and you are looking for ERP centric capabilities, for example, the way you are going to layer in your inventory, the way your product layers are going to be, you are looking for mature capabilities from the lot, serial number perspective. So you are going to have all of those capabilities as part of Acumatica. One of the other points to touch on from the Acumatica perspective, the way their product strategy is, it is friendlier for businesses that are going to have many different business models. And sometimes that helps because let's say if you are going to be manufacturing, distribution, field service, construction, professional services, you have flavors of all of these business models as part of the same business. And some of the products that we have on this list, for example, let's say if you go with the prescriptive category, and they might be great fit for those micro verticals. But let's say if you are going to do some sort of value chain integration, where you are acquiring a company or you are developing a new processes internally, in those cases you are probably going to outgrow, and then you might need to utilize one more ERP system there. So that's where Acumatica sort of fits in. It's in that, from the size perspective, it's in that small segment. That's where they have the majority of their logos. They might have some in the mid-market startup segment, but the major focus is going to be in that small segment, which is going to be roughly from 10 to roughly $100 million in revenue. Now, from the Acumatica perspective, the kind of limitations that you are going to run into. So Acumatica is prevalent right now in North America. They might have some localizations for some of the developed countries as well, but it's not as globalized as some of the other products that we have on this list. So if you are going to be present in those locations, then you either need to utilize another ERP or you need to utilize a partner add-on. So that's where you are going to run into limitations from the Acumatica perspective. Now, some of the quick strengths from the Acumatica's perspective is, it has core ERP layers and the diverse business model supported as part of the same database. It is also cloud native. That is a huge plus. They have consumption-based pricing. It could be a plus or minus depending upon how you look at it. Sometimes the consumption-based pricing could help with the seasonal businesses when they are going to have the varying capacity overall in terms of the licensing planning perspective, but Acumatica requires you to sign the contract. So obviously you do have the unlimited number of users. So from the user perspective, you don't have any problems, but then you need to understand the underlying tiers. Sometimes that could be confusing. Sometimes you are going to get surprise bills just because you didn't understand those layers. So there are challenges because of that, but consumption pricing could be a great plus for companies that might have seasonal spike in nature, and then they might not have as many users. So for that, it could be a great plus. Now, some of the limitations to keep in mind from the Acumatica perspective is not as friendly for global consolidation, just because those global locations are probably going to reside in a different database. There is not going to be as much communication synergy, operational synergy, financial synergy between those workloads. Sure, you can implement an add-on on top of that if you are doing just the financial consolidation. Acumatica has many different add-ons in their ecosystem to be able to do that. But as such, let's say if you're looking for operational synergies between those entities, depending upon your business model, etc., that might be a challenge with Acumatica. Now, some other limitations to keep in mind is that the operational capabilities that we have from the Acumatica perspective, even though they are going to be stronger than Odoo, but again, this is designed for a very specific market segment, that is the small market segment. And generally, this market segment does not require as advanced ERP processes that you are going to find in the other stronger ERP systems. If you go for Infor CSI, Infor LN, Epicor, SAP, they are going to have much richer layers when it comes to advanced mature processes, such as, let's say, if you look at the number of layers with your allocation algorithm or with the MRP algorithm, the way your transactions are going to be correlated with each other, or the documents are going to be correlated with each other. That's where the core limitations are going to be with Acumatica. But if you are going to be in that small segment, you have nothing to worry about. You should definitely include Acumatica as part of your evaluations. The final limitation to keep in mind is going to be the suite capabilities. And some of these suite capabilities are going to be available with the prescriptive products. They are going to provide, let's say, the CAD integration out of the box. That might be supported by the OEM. Sometimes they might claim that it is supported by OEM, but there might be another vendor involved. They may have borrowed that code from another vendor. They might have white label a relationship with that vendor to be able to provide that code base. But as such, with Acumatica, you have great ecosystem from where you can acquire these capabilities, but you are relying on third party. You are signing another contract. Sometimes there might be a difference in the way they are going to price, etc. So those are some of the things that you need to keep in mind. And that's number 9. Number 8 on our list is IFS. And IFS has very different positioning compared to the two products that we have reviewed so far. So Odoo is a very beginner product. Acumatica is going to be probably the next one. IFS is going to be positioned in that upper mid-market, lower enterprise segments. It is a very unique product targeted for very specific industries. That's where it does well. It might be sold or adopted in other industries as well, but if you look at the majority of their logos where they have had the major success, that is going to be in industries such as your oil and gas. They do really well in the public sector centric spaces. Any industries that are going to be slightly more project centric, that are going to be heavy on assets, as well as field service. So that's going to be your water, energy, a little bit of telecom, aviation. That's where they do really well overall from the IFS perspective. IFS might be able to sell some of these best of breed capabilities from the EAM as well as from the field service perspective. And these are enterprise grade capabilities. So let's say if you are building a 2-tier architecture where your financial core, the corporate ledger that you have, have is probably SAP or Oracle, and you are looking for best of breed capabilities from the field service or EAM perspective, in those situations as well, you are going to see IFS. So sometimes it could be confusing that, okay, whether IFS is installed as the core ERP, or is it just one of the capabilities that they have acquired when they may have claimed that they have that specific installation or the logo. So just be careful when you assess their installations or their case studies. So you need to pay attention to whether IFS is installed as ERP or not. So that's something to keep in mind while evaluating IFS. Some of the strengths to keep in mind from the IFS perspective is it is going to be suitable for industries where you have very enterprise grade enterprise asset management process, field service process. That's where IFS really shines. It also has strengths with respect to supporting the best of breed or embedded workflows. So generally with these industries, especially if they are going to be $5 billion and up in that upper enterprise segment, they cannot live on the completely consolidated workload just because they are trying to move along 50,000 employees together. And sometimes that could be very difficult for a very large organizations. And that's why they would probably have a best of breed architecture in those market segments. Once you are going to be $1 billion and up, once you are going to have IT involved, it's very, very, very hard to build a consensus on one specific ERP system. And generally, the success rate might be questionable as well of those ERP system when you are going to implement in those. So that's why companies generally go with the best of breed approach in those spaces. And if you're looking for that, and if you're looking for best of breed field service or the EAM capabilities, that's where your IFS is going to be a great fit. The IFS is much superior in their cloud native capabilities compared to some of the other legacy vendors that we have on this list. So that is going to be a plus with IFS, even though it's a legacy vendor, but they have invested a lot in their product. So now product looks as if it's cloud native. But again, this is the legacy vendor. They were not born in the cloud. Just a small distinction there. The limitations that you're looking at from the IFS perspective is it is probably going to be overwhelming for SMBs. And the reason why it is overwhelming for SMBs is because it's going to have those enterprise layers, and sometimes shoehorning that for the SMB segment could be harder. And that's why the target market segment from the size perspective matters with ERP. So make sure you are buying a product in the right size. So even if the enterprise products are going to claim that they can do everything that a smaller product can do, but they will be very overwhelming just because they are going to have a lot of processes that you are never going to utilize. And obviously, they are going to be very expensive as well. The reason for that is because they are charging for all of that. Sometimes they are going to argue that you will never have to come out of that system. That could be a plus. But at the same time, in general, the way companies operate, within 5-10 years, your corporate strategy is going to change. So planning for that long is probably not wise. But again, depending upon your corporate strategy in terms of what you are approaching, you need to make a decision around that. So the other limitations that you are looking at from the IFS perspective is their North American presence wasn't as high compared to the other vendors on this list, but they have made substantial advancements in their North American presence. Now they are winning in North America. We don't have an exact count in terms of how many logos they have. Their presence is going to be limited compared to other vendors that were predominant in North America. But overall, their presence is growing. It might still be limited compared to the other vendors. And IFS would fall under that prescriptive category. So it's probably not going to be as diverse as some of the other solutions that we have, the generalized solutions, but they are going to have their own sort of pros and cons. So that's number 8. Number 7 on our list is Apicor Kinetic. And Apicor Kinetic is a very interesting product. Again, it's very different compared to every other product that we have on this list. So number 1, overall, from the layers perspective, the layers that we had discussed in the beginning is it would fall under that prescriptive category. So you are going to get suite capabilities baked as part of the suite. So let's say if you are simply trying to tear apart all of these components and you are trying to buy many different components that you need to use with Apicor Kinetic, that might not be the smartest strategy. Because number 1, the ecosystem is not going to be developed from the Apicor perspective because Apicor is trying to sell this as part of the suite. So you are going to have better bang for your buck when you are going to utilize from the Apicor perspective. Now, the question is going to be whether you can replace all of those components, whether your teams are willing to get rid of all of those components and manage all of those processes as part of the Apicor suite, and that is going to be any of the CAD systems that you're going to have, WMS system, etc. So the ecosystem is going to be limited, but overall, from the suite perspective, you are going to get a lot more capabilities. And again, every single prescriptive product on this list is going to have very, very, very similar flavor. Now, among those prescriptive products where Apicore Kinetic really shines, it is going to have very complex inventory layers, and Apicore Kinetic also have the manufacturing and distribution processes from the MRP, from the supply chain planning perspective. They are going to be built as part of the product. Apicore Kinetic also supports some of the things such as your project manufacturing. It has superior layers overall in supporting all of those business models. Now, if you're going to compare this with some of the other products that we have on this list from Infor, etc., they might be slightly limited in their perspective, and we are going to talk about every single product where they sort of differ, where they sort of shine. But Apicore Kinetic is going to be relevant in those industries where you have very formal engineering process, where revision number is going to be driver for your BOM. That is going to be mandatory, where you want to make sure that people don't sort of bypass those things. And this is going to be relevant in industries such as aerospace, which is one of the industries that Apicore Kinetic is going to be really strong in. The other industries that you're looking at, for example, metal is going to have very detailed inventory layer from the attribute perspective, and sometimes it's very hard to find a product that is going to support the inventory planning as well as your manufacturing. Plus, it's not going to be retail like product. That's where Apicore Kinetic is sort of really strong, but these are going to be very specific industries where Apicore Kinetic really shines. Some limitations to keep in mind, and I think I have touched on some of them already. So that is going to be Apicore Kinetic is the prescriptive product, so obviously it's not going to be as diverse. The financial layers that you have is going to be slightly limiting. The way the finance module is designed, it's almost sort of separate, but there are a lot of different prescriptive products that take this approach. And the reason for that is because Apicore in general traditionally was more of the operational product, but then they sort of developed the financial capabilities as well. So sometimes that experience could be slightly different. It's not going to be as streamlined as you are going to find with the newer products that have the financial processes baked as part of the same product. So that's where you are going to run into issues. It's not going to be as global. Overall, the number of layers that you have to support your financial processes are going to be limited. And that's why Apicore Connected right now, that does really well in the smaller segment. It does really well in the lower mid-market segment. It might not do as well, let's say in upper mid-market segment. It might have some logos, but it's not there yet. It might have some logos in the enterprise space as well, but it's not as proven. So those are some of the limitations to keep in mind from the Apicore Kinetic perspective, and that's number 7. Now, number 6 on our list is Infor Cloud Suite, LN, and M3. And these two are two completely different products. And sometimes it's very hard to score Infor's product because each of them are positioned for very specific industries. They are not going to have as much market share. So it almost comes across as if they are probably not leading product. But they are going to be leading product for those industries, and that's why we sort of bundle them together, because they just don't have any sort of overlap. They are targeted for the similar market segment. So from the Infor Cloud Suite LN M3 perspective, if you compare this with the Apicore Kinetic product, which is a very similar product, targets very similar industries, but Infor Cloud Suite LN M3, they are going to be slightly different. Number one, LN is going to be for slightly more discrete workload. M3 is going to be for process manufacturing. If you are going to have overlap, that's where these products are going to struggle. So for example, in certain industries where you are also going to have discrete plus process, depending upon the depth of those discrete process versus the process. Some examples could be, let's say, if you are producing some sort of medical device and you have a very small process for your process manufacturing as well as part of that business model, in that would qualify as more of the discrete, which may have 20% process. So again, you need to look at what is the percentage of each of the business model or the manufacturing process that you have, because each of these products are designed for a very specific perspective. So again, from the LN perspective, that is for discrete centric processes, and this is going to be for that upper mid-market segment. That is going to be your anywhere from your $250 million to roughly $1 billion. They might have some enterprise logos as well. Sometimes it is installed in that two-tier setting where your SAP Oracles of the world, they are not going to have as much manufacturing capabilities. So they might be installed as the corporate ledger at the plant level. You might have LN or M3 installed. Epicor Kinetic may be installed there as well. But overall, from the strength of LN M3 is going to be in that upper mid-market. That's where it is really strong. So some of the quickest trends from the Infor Cloud Suite LN-M3 perspective. Number one, it is going to have the comprehensive discrete and process capabilities. Again, LN is discrete product, M3 is process product. If you are going to have both of them together, that's where you are going to run into challenges. So if you are pure play discrete or pure play process, and in process as well, there may be many different micro industries, and M3 does not do well in all of those industries. So again, you need to pay attention to which micro industry we are talking about and if M3 is going to have those capabilities. But if you are going to be in those market segment, you definitely want to carefully review the capabilities of these two products. Now, the other strength that we have is, again, this is a very prescriptive product, so you are going to get pre-integrated suite. And then you are also going to have the global capabilities. The global capabilities, if you look at the number of countries that are going to be supported as part of the core product, supported by your OEM, they are maintaining those localizations. It's going to be far more than smaller products when you compare with this with, for example, Acumatica. Odoo has a lot more localization, but from the operational capabilities perspective, that is much smaller product. So again, this is designed for global companies, and in that upper mid-market segment, these companies require a lot more capabilities in general from the global footprint perspective. The limitations that you're looking at, it's going to be expensive compared to these smaller products just because you have a lot more capabilities. So it makes sense if you're going to be smaller, and if you are not going to utilize all of those capabilities, then you are probably going to waste money. So again, you get what you pay for. So this one is going to be slightly more on the expensive side. It is not necessarily suitable for SMBs below $250 million in revenue. Sometimes Infor as well as their resellers might push this product for the segments that are going to be below that segment, just because they might not have a product that they might be able to sell in those spaces. But if you look at the other vendors, they are probably going to have those. In general, the core positioning that we have from the Infor Cloud Suite and M3 perspective is that for that upper mid-market segment, which is going to be $250 million and up, it's probably going to be slightly overwhelming, over bloated for the lower segment if companies try to utilize that. And as with any prescriptive products, the ecosystem is going to be limited. The consulting base is probably going to be limited. So that's the risk that you run into with any prescriptive products. It has nothing to do with Infor Cloud Suite. They are going to be fairly similar. So the strategy that you need to decide is, do you want to go with the vanilla product or do you want to go with the prescriptive products? And that's number 6. Number 5 on our list is Microsoft Dynamics 365 Business Central. And this would fall under that generalized vanilla category. So again, with any vanilla products, one of the trends that you are going to see is that their consulting base is going to be much broader than the ecosystem that they are going to have. The number of add-ons that are going to be supported as part of the ecosystem are going to be far more. But if you look at the native capabilities, that are going to be on a leaner side. In general, the way these larger vendors, Microsoft, SAP, Oracle, the way they design their product, they are taking slightly more platform-centric strategy so that their resellers, their developers can develop more capabilities, industry capabilities on top of that product. Again, there are always going to be pros and cons of every single product in the market. So this product will be a fit. Let's say if you are going to be in spaces where you don't even have your Infor Cloud Suite or Epicor supported, that's when you don't have a choice. You have to go with these products and then whatever you can find in those spaces. That could be number 1 possibility. Number 2 possibility could be that if you're looking for slightly more global localization, or if you are part of the holding companies where you have many different business models that you need to support, or you are looking to streamline your portfolio as part of your private equity, in those cases, your Microsoft Dynamics Business Central is going to be a fit. But if you look at the core operational capabilities, they are going to be much leaner than any of the prescriptive products that we have on the list. Now, some of the quick strengths from the Microsoft Dynamics 365 BC perspective, this is going to be the comprehensive localization across the globe. So the global capabilities are going to be far more. The ecosystem is going to be far more developed. And then one of the strengths that Microsoft products have is that they are highly customizable, especially in the cloud. The cloud products are going to have substantial limitations in general, and sometimes these limitations are very hard to know in the upfront process because you have not done any sort of POC. You are going to know them as you are going to implement, develop, test. That's when you are going to know all of these. And that's where your Microsoft Dynamics 365 BC is designed for very high customization. And sometimes even SAP could be very restrictive just because they are trying to create that financial control, and sometimes that might not allow you to have the processes the way you want. So that's where your Microsoft Dynamics is probably going to be a better fit if you're looking for that. The limitations to keep in mind from the business central perspective is the last mile capabilities are going to be through your third party vendors. Implementation is likely to be more expensive just because you are dealing with a lot of different vendors. If you are trying to customize, that's going to be much more expensive. You have much bigger risk of failing that implementation unless you have very mature IT organization who have figured out how to build the enterprise architecture, how to align the roles and responsibilities of each of the systems and add-ons. And that's why we see a lot more failures in general, any of the generalized products, just because companies are trying to overcome it. They don't understand how to be successful with these products. They don't have the same IT maturity that your enterprise organizations are going to have. So that is the only reason why we see a lot more failures with these products. It is not against the product itself. The other limitations that you will require a lot more mature internal IT capabilities. So if you have executives who have implemented this in past, then this could be a great fit. Otherwise, you might need to look for slightly more prescriptive products. They are going to be easier because they are going to have all of these capabilities pre-baked, pre-integrated, pre-tested for you, so you just don't have as much risk. And that's number 5. Number 4 on our list is Oracle Cloud ERP. And Oracle Cloud ERP is the enterprise grade product. So that is going to be for in our segments based on the size. So you have the startup, small, mid, and enterprise. This is going to be proven and installed majorly in that enterprise segment. Sometimes that might be installed in the upper mid-market segment as well. But if you are going to install this in any other segments, that's probably going to be a stretch. It's going to feel overwhelming. That's where you have much higher risk of failing with these larger products, even though they are going to claim that, they are going to have all of the capabilities that you are going to find in these smaller products, but still that's a risk that you have. So overall, from the corporate strategy perspective, this particular system is going to be very similar as any of the generalized products, and they are going to have much bigger ecosystem. If you are buying this to support many, many, many different business models, that's where Oracle Cloud ERP is probably going to be a great fit. This is a great fit as the corporate ledger when you might utilize another system in the 2-tier setting that is going to be slightly more operationally rich. So if you are buying this for corporate ledger, you are trying to consolidate all of your global entities across many different geographies. That's where Oracle Cloud ERP is probably going to shine. The strengths that we have from the Oracle Cloud ERP perspective is ERP layers are going to be there for very complex organizations. They are going to support all of those, so you don't have to build those layers. The diversity of the solutions supporting many different industries and global compliance and localization. So those are going to be some of the strengths. The limitations to keep in mind is the last mile capabilities through third-party vendors, and then expensive implementation, as well as it requires mature internal IT org just because of the complexity of the implementation. So that's number 4. Number 3 on our list is Microsoft Dynamics 365 FNO. Microsoft Dynamics 365 FNO is a very similar product as your Oracle Cloud ERP, but it's going to be slightly smaller in size. The number of layers that you're going to have inside your Oracle Cloud ERP from the enterprise workflow perspective, they are going to be far more because they are designed for those global, very complex enterprises. So you are not going to have all of those layers inside your Microsoft Dynamics 365 FNO. Overall, from the ERP layer perspective, also, if you look at where they are proven, so right now, if you look at their number of logos, where you are going to find the majority of the logos, Oracle Cloud ERP is far more proven in those large enterprise spaces. Microsoft Dynamics 365 F&O, you are going to find in the upper mid market, you might find in the lower enterprise, some enterprise as well, depending upon the scope of the ERP. Sometimes they might be using only as the corporate financial ledger, so they just don't have the same workload expectations that is going to be there. For example, let's say if you look at a workload where they are running their global MRP as part of the ERP itself, that's a very different workload than doing just the GL, doing just the corporate ledger. So again, Microsoft Dynamics 365 F&O is a slightly smaller product. By the way, they have a change in the name, so pay attention to that as well. It is no longer called F&O. They have another name, something with supply chain, etc. They keep changing their names every day, but this is the same product, F&O. It's just a rebranding that they have done from the product name perspective, so pay attention to that. Some of the strengths to keep in mind from the F&O perspective is comprehensive localization across the globe, ecosystem, development, platform, and Azure. So those are some of the strengths that we have from the F&O perspective. Limitations, last mile capabilities through third-party vendors. That's going to be standard across any of the generalized products. The implementation requires mature IT org. That is going to be with any enterprise product that you have or the generalized product that you have. It's a very general theme. In general, comparing this with Microsoft Dynamics, Business Central is designed more for the smaller market. It just does not have as many layers. It cannot support as many business models. It will require a lot more add-ons compared to your F&O products. So that's a comparison between two Microsoft products. So that's number 3. Number 2 on our list is SAP S/4HANA, and SAP S/4HANA is a very similar product as Oracle Cloud ERP. It is proven a lot more in those large enterprise spaces, lower enterprise. Sometimes you are going to find this in upper mid-market as well. Anything below that, it's probably going to be a stretch in general. SAP S/4HANA has created slightly more mid-market friendly product using the same code base. They are claiming that that's a truncated code base for the mid-market segment. But again, review carefully in terms of what you are going to get as part of that. Sometimes truncating these capabilities for the mid-market could be challenging. In general, the way the product is designed, the way corporate strategy is designed, it does require many add-ons. It is trying to support many different business models. It is trying to support many global workloads as well. So that's where SAP S/4HANA is strong, but that does require very expensive implementation, very mature IT org. So you are going to run into those challenges. The beauty of SAP S/4HANA is that if you are looking to consolidate every single process across the board, including your MRP distribution, etc., it has been proven for very large organizations that are going to have millions and millions of transactions per second, especially when they are going to have very complex products that require, let's say, the serial number processing. Sometimes we have seen issues because of the speed, transactional speed. Unless you do POC, it might be harder to be able to assess whether this product is going to work, once you start using that or not. So that could be a challenge. But overall, SAP S/4HANA is positioned for those large enterprises. The strengths that you're looking at from the SAP S/4HANA perspective is ERP layers for complex organizations, the diversity of the solution supporting discrete industries. It is going to have some sort of process flavor as well, so it can support many different business models. Then your global compliance and localization is going to be there, natively baked. Limitations that you're looking at, last mile capabilities through third-party vendors, expensive implementation, and does require mature internal IT org. So that's number 2. Now, number 1 on our list is NetSuite. And NetSuite, if you look at the overarching positioning of NetSuite and where it is really successful. So NetSuite does have the global footprint from the financial consolidation perspective compared to your Acumatica. Acumatica is very limited product overall from the geo footprint perspective, but Acumatica does have operational capabilities that are going to be much richer, deeper for product-centric organizations. NetSuite is far more successful in slightly more e-commerce-centric organizations, retail, service-centric organizations. That is going to be the target market for Oracle. That's where Oracle traditionally has been very successful, and these are the industries even NetSuite is trying to target as well. NetSuite again would fall under that generalized category where you are going to find a lot of different add-ons as well as third-party options. If you care for that, then you are going to have one of the largest ecosystem from the NetSuite perspective. Now, NetSuite is predominantly proven in that small and mid-sized segment. The company is going to be much larger in that enterprise segment. NetSuite may not be the best fit, as well as for the startup segment, it may be too bloated. So again, NetSuite is used in many different market segments. Sometimes companies don't even think about it. They simply buy NetSuite, but then they struggle also with that just because for the smaller organizations, it's probably going to be overwhelming with those financial layers, but then it's not going to have as much operational capabilities. So you are probably going to require a lot more add-ons, and depending upon the quality of those add-ons, how well they are integrated, how well they are talking to each other, and sometimes that could depend upon your process and data as well. If that is not streamlined, you are going to find fun challenges in making them work together. So the strength that you're looking at from the NetSuite perspective is, one of the most well adopted ISVs in its ecosystem. You have very large companies that have done marvelous job in creating those ISVs. So the ISVs are going to be far more proven compared to the other ecosystems where you might not have as successful ISVs. Sometimes those add-ons are created by value-added resellers, and they just don't have as much expertise. They are not funded by private equity. Some of these ISVs are going to be funded by private equity, so the quality of their code is going to be far superior. Their commercial model is going to be far superior as well compared to an add-on developed by a VAR, which might have very limited number of installations. So that's going to be a strength. Now, some of the other strengths to keep in mind from the NetSuite perspective is, well adopted ISVs in its ecosystem covering many different business models. The data model is going to be friendlier for retail and service-centric industries. The localization covering most countries across the globe. So that's why it makes it a very global product compared to the other ones that we have. The limitations that you're looking at, the several add-ons required for most industries. So that's going to be a challenge. It gets very expensive very fast. The pricing is very tricky. NetSuite might claim that they don't have consumption-based pricing, but they have tiers as part of their pricing model. Sometimes that comes across as a shock. So it is one of the most expensive product. And then chances of failure is going to be higher with any of the generalized product, just like the ones that we have discussed so far. So that's number one. If you enjoyed this video, we are going to publish a detailed article and going to link with this video as well. So you might want to check that. We publish these videos on a weekly basis. If you don't want to miss out, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell to get notified. This podcast is also available in the audio form if you prefer that, and you can find that on Apple, Spotify, Google. Also, if you have not checked our digital transformation report, we publish every year. We are going to have these rankings captured as part of that report and a lot of insights that you need to be successful with digital transformation initiatives. So download that. You are going to find the QR code throughout this video. On that note, thank you so much for tuning in. I'll see you in the next video.